Hey y'all, welcome back to another Redzone Rodeo episode. We're happy to be back after I guess some might say a good week and others might say a horrible week in week one of the NFL. But we're happy to be back and doing this. We're happy to be connecting with you all once more. And we got a great show ahead of you. And so thank you all for tuning in. Thank you all for sticking around, listening. And like always, folks, we're here to grow the community. So if you have any comments or questions or whatnot, don't hesitate to put them down in the comment section below. And next show, we'll start to, start addressing those and whatnot. But we're going to jump right on into it. And I'm going to take the center stage, Rob, here, okay? Because we have to talk about my Titans. And I think this photograph really encapsulates everything of the Titans' loss on this past Sunday. This was probably one of the worst losses I've ever seen my team play in a long time. And, first off the bat, I want to say Caleb Williams was trash, okay? He did not play great, and I think anybody other than ignorant Bears fans can agree with that statement. And the second statement that I'll make about the game is the Bears didn't win that game. The Titans lost that game. That's exactly what happened. And it was really a tale of two halves, where the first half, it seemed like everything was clicking like it should be. The Titans were driving the ball down the field offensively. Defensively, they were stopping the Bears. And there was a lot of great work done. And then the second half came around, and it was like, did this team revert to a high school self and whatnot? And you know what? I know that it's week one, and I know people are probably going to overreact to things like that. And I'm certainly not on the bandwagon of Titans fans that are calling for Will Levis to be benched and Mason Rudolph to start week two. But I will tell you this. We need to see better quarterback play from Will Levis. That has to be the standard going into week two. It has to be better. And it can't just be week two that he balls out. It needs to be consistent. And one thing that I think that is really unfortunate at the moment is I think Will Levis is still in his mindset of playing at Kentucky. And when you're playing in college, of course you want to be the hero. You want to make big plays. You don't want to take sacks. But this isn't college anymore. This is the NFL. Sometimes the best thing to do is to take a sack instead of throwing up a 50-50 ball that results in a pick six and you losing the game, or other things like that. And I think on top of that too, Mr. Levis, he needs to understand that this is the NFL, and when he's going to run the ball and try to truck players and run them over, yeah, that looks cool. I remember, that photograph of him running over Jalen Ramsey in that Dolphins game. Yeah, that was a sick photograph. But the problem is that that's not sustainable in the NFL. You're going to get yourself hurt. And this is the same conversation that I've had with many people before about Anthony Richardson. If he puts himself into harm's way, he's going to get hurt. And it doesn't matter how great of a quarterback you can be. If you're only going to be around for 5 weeks of the season, then the rest of the season, you're having to start a backup quarterback, and your team's prospects of going anywhere close to the Super Bowl start to diminish. And so that was really awful to see as well. So not only was Will Levis putting himself in jeopardizing situations, he could get himself hurt when he didn't need to, but he was also making terrible play decisions. And if that continues on, I mean, I'm not trying to be this dark, depressing Titans fan, but, this team's not going to win a lot of football games if that ends up being the case. And I think that the team is poised to win a lot more football games when those mistakes aren't made. And so I'm hoping that this is week one. In a lot of ways, it's kind of the preseason game 4 in some regards. There's a lot to learn from this game. I'm not going to be, some of those fans out there that are always calling for doom and despair. It's the whole season's over. To scrap the team, tank, prepare for, the first pick in the draft to pick a quarterback. I wouldn't say to go that far, because I still believe in Levis. I still think he can do what he can do on the field. I've seen it in a couple games. He just needs to get consistent, and he needs to do better. And this was a horrifying loss. It was really bad. Hoping for better results in week 2.
Yeah, I gotta say, I agree with that first thing you said about Caleb Williams. He was not good at all. He'll probably be better, as the season goes on. But in this particular game, he wasn't. He was probably the second worst player on the field. I have two Bears wide receivers in fantasy, so watching him struggle was not the most fun thing in the world for me. He barely did anything to get that offense moving. I don't think he had like a single touchdown pass or anything like that. He was, just stalling drive after drive after drive. All that being said, the one player on the field who was worse than Caleb Williams was, unfortunately, Will Levis. And man, that was tough to watch. I don't know how you let a 17-point lead slip away like that when the opposing offense is incapable of scoring. That almost seems impossible. But Will Levis made it happen somehow. I'm sorry, Carson. That must have been like really, really tough to watch. Uh, I will say, with a lot of doom and gloom for the Titans, there were a few positives. I was very, very impressed with Savondre Sweat. And obviously Simmons next to him is a beast. I think the two of them are going to be a problem for anyone who tries to run the ball in Tennessee all year long. Um, Calvin Ridley looked better than I thought he would. Will Levis wasn't throwing the rock that well, but it seemed like he was open when Ridley, or not Ridley, when wow, I forgot. Will Levis was open or able to throw the ball. Ridley was there to catch it. So that was good for them. Outside of that, not really too many positives for Tennessee, but you know, it's only game one. Hopefully things will get better for them as the season goes along. But if Will Levis has a repeat performance, then I think you might have to seriously consider looking at Mason Rudolph as the new quarterback of the Tennessee Titans.
Absolutely. I mean, that's really what it's really going to come down to. Now, I don't think that Will Levis will be benched if he plays this way next week. I think it will probably be later, like week 8, week 9, when that ends up being happening. Just because granted, there's a lot of new things moving on this team. You got a new head coach, new offensive scheme, new defensive coordinator. Which I mean, that's really was the shining light in all of this. The defensive played lights out in this game against the Bears. Um, and so there's a lot of moving pieces. And so I hope week 2, things will be sorted on out. They'll go back to the drawing room. They'll be able to be like, look, this can't happen again. And maybe it's a learning lesson. I always believe you learn from your mistakes. And if you're a smart person, you don't repeat those same mistakes. And so I'm hoping that that's going to be the case moving forward with this team, not only just Will Levis, but also some of the other players that made some questionable decisions. And I hope that, there'll be some more positives going into week 2, such as ball distribution to all the receivers. I'd like to see Traylon Burks get some more touches. I'd like to see Tyler Boyd get some more touches if he could. Calvin Ridley was doing great stuff. And, like you said, Rob, he was playing a lot better than he'd played for the Jaguars the season before. So that's positive. But yeah, just, I mean, all around just needs to be a little bit better. But there's hope. There's hope. It's not all doom and gloom, but this can't happen again. Otherwise, it's going to be a long year for the Tennessee Titans.
When do you guys play the Packers?
Week 3.
Okay, if you lose to Malik Willis or Ryan Tannehill, whoever they have at quarterback at that point, I think that would be, enough to get Will Levis benched because I don't know if the Titans locker room could handle watching the guy they traded away beat the guy that they kept. So
I absolutely agree. I absolutely agree. There's been some people even in like the fan base that has been calling for Ryan Tannehill to be re-signed by the Titans to come on back and play, which I mean, I don't think is needed because I think Mason Rudolph is probably a better QB than, or a better QB option that we already have than Ryan Tannehill, and trying to sign him and pay him money. Mason Rudolph, he's not so much younger, but he's a little bit younger. And I think he has better mobility than Tannehill. So, but I mean, it would be absolutely depressing if the Packers have Tannehill or Malik Willis and they beat us. That would be really humiliating. So um, obviously that'll be probably the talk for the next week's episode. But if it does come to that, I could see very easily, Will Levis being benched then. But there's just a part of me that even if he does lose, I still think Callahan wants to see what he can do multiple weeks, not just 3. But that might be enough for a sample. But here's to hoping that the Titans go on and win in week 2. Anything can happen in this league. So Yeah, we'll just see what happens. We'll see what happens.
Well, you know who didn't lose this past weekend was my Dallas Cowboys. And their biggest victory, I think, actually happened before they even stepped on the football field. Because a few hours before their game, the news broke they signed Dak Prescott to a 4-year, $240 million extension, $60 million a year, almost all of it fully guaranteed. Now that's a huge deal for a quarterback, but I'd say Dak Prescott has earned every penny of it. The next quarterback up always gets the biggest deal. That's just kind of how it works. And Dak was just the next guy up. He was second in MVP voting last year. He's led us to 3 straight 12-win seasons. I think most teams would probably kill for that level of quarterback consistency. I know he hasn't made it all the way in the playoffs, but he has won playoff games. So I know he can do it at that level. He just needs to do it 3 times in a row instead of just once and then flaming out like he has the past couple times. Uh, but overall, really excited about that deal. We signed CeeDee Lamb just the week before, so the two of them are locked in now for the next half a decade on the Cowboys. Getting to watch the two of them play together for that long is going to be really exciting. I think we'll always be contenders as long as we have the two of them and Micah Parsons on the team. So it's just a great thing for the Cowboys overall to have those guys locked up long term. On the field, oh man, the Cowboys defense was unstoppable on Sunday. I have not seen them look that good in a long, long time. We've had some good defenses over the past few years, but they've never been like that. Uh, Under Dan Quinn, our defenses always seem to have like Achilles heel moments where, all of a sudden someone will be like wide open with nobody covering them, or, just running the ball seemed to generally be a weakness for Dan Quinn defenses. They couldn't really stop that. Mike Zimmer led defense in Dallas was completely different. It was like a well-run ship. Everybody was doing exactly what they should be when they should be doing it. And I will also say the difference in talent in our linebacker room was off the charts, noticeable. Last year, our linebackers were terrible. This year, I think we might have one of the best linebacker units in the entire league. Demarvian Overshone returning from injury. Eric Hendricks, who we just signed, for like peanuts comparatively. This past offseason had 2 sacks and an interception. All of a sudden we have these great linebackers, and I think our defensive tackles are playing better too, which is why the linebackers looked a lot better. Offensively, Dak and CD looked like they never left. They were clicking right off the bat. The offensive line kind of struggled with, Myles Garrett and all those elite defensive linemen they have, but that's expected. We were starting 2 rookies. Zach Martin's not as good as he used to be. The only one who really I thought showed up on the offensive line was Tyler Smith. That's okay because I think they're all going to get better as the season goes on. I thought the Cowboys had a great plan for dealing with Myles Garrett. He only had 1 sack, even though he was whooping our rookie left tackle all day long. They just kept moving Dak Prescott away from the pressure, which was very smart. In the second half, they kind of slowed down a little bit, didn't really score anything, but that's just because the offense kind of shut down because they already had such a big lead. And then Carson, something that I'm sure warmed your heart as a former Generals fan, as well as it did mine, watching Devontae Turpin get his first ever punt return touchdown in the NFL. That was amazing. And, ultimately, the Cowboys blew out a team that was in the playoffs last year and had the number one ranked defense at home all year. So it was a really impressive victory. There was definitely some sloppiness that needs to be cleaned up, especially on the offensive line, I think, is probably the biggest area where I'd like to see improvement. But overall, great win, and it was really promising for the rest of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. And you kind of mentioned that near the end, and I'd like to harp on that too. A lot of these games for week one, they were really close, and some teams that were, I didn't think was going to be such of a close game, ended up being a close game. There was only a couple that were really in one way or another blowouts. Most of the games were actually one score game type of situations. But this was one of them. And, I think that certainly surprised me with the outcome, just based on the fact of how the Browns played last year, and especially all the talent they added again this year throughout the offseason, especially with that defense that was ranked number one. Or I shouldn't say maybe it wasn't ranked number one, but at least in my mind, it was one of the top ones last year. And then, they still played decent football, defensively, but it was really offensive struggles. And I think the question really comes down with the Browns is, well, is Deshaun Watson the guy? And he's being paid money like he is the guy, but he can't get any of the results. He has a great cast of receivers around him. He has the talent around him. And, you stick some of these other, I don't know, less capable quarterbacks, maybe situational quarterbacks or system quarterbacks. Like some people are calling. You put them in a situation like Cleveland's, and they're probably going to excel better than Deshaun Watson. So for Browns fans, I'm sure they're worried because whether or not they thought they were going to beat the Cowboys last week, um, or not, I'm sure they all thought it was going to be a close game, and it really wasn't. Score wise, it wasn't, and even on the field wise, there really wasn't a point in the game where it felt like it was close. It really felt like Dallas was dominating, like the title of the slide says. And and there was nothing Cleveland could do to stop it. Not Miles Garrett. The offense couldn't respond. And so I think that certainly this Cowboys team has come out and shown people who started to doubt them in this offseason based on, oh, well, look what they didn't make moves on these players. They didn't add these players. They didn't sign these players at this time, and it's kind of showing that, maybe Jerry Jones holding his cards close to his chest ended up being in one way or another a win. Now, granted, this is week one. And this is again playing a team like the Browns who Deshaun Watson just doesn't seem to be it, and so maybe that could lead to some locker room issues and performance abilities. But Dallas came out strong, and if they continue this way through the season, now it's going to have to be seen if they can do it in the playoffs. But this team looks like it's back. It looks like it's powerful. It looks like it can contend for the NFC, East once more with the Eagles up there. I know Eagles fans probably don't want to agree with that, but it certainly can. So that's one thing I took away from this game, being one of the more blowout losses for the Browns and victories for the Cowboys. I think this is certainly a team that you have to start to realize it's got a lot going for it, despite not enough offseason hype.
Yeah, hey, there was never a doubt, man. Always knew this team was gonna compete for the NFC East title. But you asked, is Deshaun Watson the quarterback for the Cleveland Browns? And something that I just still blows my mind to this day. Dak Prescott signed that new deal, got the most guaranteed money anyone ever has gotten. There's a quarterback in the league with $1 million less guaranteed money. That was the previous record, and that's Deshaun Watson. It's kind of crazy to think he had this huge record-setting contract that went untouched for years until Dak just signed that deal on Sunday. And then this is the level of product that he puts on the field. I mean, it's really an impossible situation for Cleveland because he's got all that guaranteed money left that they have to pay him. They can't get rid of him. If they cut him, the dead cap hit would be like almost their entire salary cap next year, I think, or at least close to $200 million. So he has to stay in Cleveland as a backup. I mean, I think that would make more sense than him being a starter. I feel like Jameis Winston or someone like that would have had a better game on Sunday than Deshaun Watson did. I don't know what's wrong with him. It seems like he's broken. He just doesn't know how to play the position anymore, which is weird. I don't think I've ever seen that happen to a quarterback before, but it's happened to him. And the Browns really, I think, made the worst trade all time when they sent all that capital to Houston to get him. Because look, Houston turned that into like Will Anderson, Kenyon Green, and now they have this great contending team. And here's Cleveland stuck with the biggest or second biggest now quarterback guarantee in history and nothing to show for it. So, yeah, definitely a disaster for Cleveland. Great sign for the Cowboys. And I'd be remiss if I forgot to shout out the Cowboys kicker, Brandon Aubrey. Oh, my goodness, man. I think he is the best kicker in the league. Nailed that 66-yarder, even though it didn't end up counting. I think he would have made it from 71. I understand why they didn't try it, but boy, I think he is by far the best kicker in football, and that's exciting.
Absolutely. And I think close right there behind him, talking about USFL and UFL talent, Brendan Aubrey being with the Stallions, Jake Bates, with the Lions, him, cracking those ones, and keeping the Lions into the game, going to overtime, just great to see that, and even Cavante Turpin, that was in this game against the Browns, having that, it was a punt return, correct, for a touchdown?
Yep.
Yeah, punt return for a touchdown. Great to see talent coming from the UFL, showing that this league is viable, it's important, and it gives these players opportunities to go off and to compete. And you know what? It might take a while for some players to get up to that level, that jump from college to professional. Some players, they just can't quite make the transition because it's such a large jump. And so these players have certainly gone off from college, or maybe if they feel like they want to still compete, and now look, they're making NFL rosters and they're making big time plays. So
Yeah,
big shout out to the UFL there as well, and why it's important.
absolutely. For sure.
Well, we're going to move on into our Redzone Rodeo Power Rankings for the first time in this new season. And we're going to start off the list at number 10. We have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I would first off will say that this team, I think, surprised a lot of people with how good that they played in week one, and I know some people might be like, well, it's just week one, it's basically preseason, game number 4. A lot of things can change. And that's great. But this Tampa Bay Buccaneers team looks like it had come together. And rallying around Baker Mayfield seems to be that consistent quarterback that they need for that offense. And he has the weapons around him to excel as well. Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, despite them being older players, and I know some people like to think that older players are not the greatest that you can get, and that it does come with some durability questions, but they seem to play better than half of the younger receivers that had played in week one. So, hats off to them continuing up their work ethic. But the defense also came out strong. So we have this team at number 10 because they certainly came on out. They've played, as good as the team could have played and better, I think. And I think they're going to give a lot of these teams in the leagues a run for their money. Talk about a team that's going to be taking over the NFC South. I think a lot of people had the Falcons as that number 1 team. And I think some people might still, but this Buccaneers team is built great and it's built to win. And I would not be surprised they take the crown in the NFC South. And not only that, they make a run in the playoffs. Granted, that's week 1, but that's why we have them at number 10 here.
Yeah, Carson, I got to give you credit, man. You said the Buccaneers were the best team in the NFC South last week, and I was very certain it was the Falcons, and I think I was dead wrong. I will say last week what I said was if Baker Mayfield plays really well, this team has the equipment to be a very good team because they have a great defense. They're loaded at receiver. Offensive line is good. They got Tristan Wirfs out there at left tackle. And Baker Mayfield blew away my expectations. I did not think he was capable of playing a game like that. Now, granted, we've all seen him have those miracle moments before, like when he was with the Rams and he had that comeback or whatever after only being there for a few days. So the danger here, we have to make sure this is going to be consistent. But if Baker Mayfield keeps playing like that, this Titans team or not Titans, wow, Buccaneers team has a really good roster, and I think they could go really far in the playoffs this year. I don't think they'd be all the way in the NFC Championship game, but I could easily see them making the divisional round and giving a team like Dallas, Philadelphia, or San Francisco a run for their money there. Uh, like we were just talking about, they're strong at pretty much every position. Out that quarterback was really the only question mark. So if they can keep getting that sort of production out of it, I think they'll not only stay at 10, but I think they'll probably climb up this list throughout the season if they can do that.
Absolutely. I mean, I'll start off by saying again, I wish the Titans were at number 10, but they're not. They're probably 30th or something like that based on how badly they played. But it's okay. That's why we don't do power rankings down there, because that would just be depressing for me personally. But I think Baker Mayfield, this is his environment to thrive, and not to keep bashing against the Browns with Watson and whatnot, but the Browns for the longest time has been a dysfunctional franchise. And talk about a toxic fan base as well. Not everybody, but a lot of them. And, there was those times where, you mentioned Baker Mayfield would have those really good games and he'd be regarded as a hero. But the next game, if he did not play up to their standards, it was the world's crushing down and it's all your fault. And it's really tough to have, confidence in yourself, confidence as a starting quarterback with everything else that you have to do. Pretty much the most important position on the football field, that certainly takes a lot when you don't feel like you have people believing in you or backing you up. And so I think the Buccaneers certainly has been this great kind of like shining light landing spot for him. I think that, granted, in every fan base are going to have the naysayers if a game doesn't go the way that they had hoped it went. But he has the players around him. He has the system that works well with him. He has the coaching, and he has, for the most part right now, the fan base that's in full support. And if that continues going in his favor, I think the sky's the limit for this team. And I think you're right, Rob. We'll start to see this team creeping up the power ranking list.
Yeah, absolutely. They're at number 9. We have another team that I think is probably going to climb up this list throughout the season if they keep doing what they're doing, and that's the Houston Texans. They played a really tough opponent, divisional opponent, revenge game, given that they just knocked them out of the playoffs last season in their last regular season game. Houston Texans against the Indianapolis Colts, and they met, I think every challenge perfectly, pretty much. Their running back went off for 150 something yards, something like that. CJ Stroud was amazing. Stephon Diggs, who I think both of us thought was probably washed, and I thought that was maybe not the best acquisition. He really showed up for the Texans. Nico Collins looked great. That defensive line looked great. Anthony Richardson, he did have some wild plays like he always will in every game I think he plays, but I think he only completed 9 passes or something like that. That Texans defense really looked like it came to play, and that offense looked even better than it did last year. It looked like they really got those missing pieces they needed to kind of fill out that roster. So if they keep playing like they did against the Colts, again, this is another team that I could only see going up the list and not down the list. We'll have to see if CJ Stroud plays like he did in that first game, or if he hits a rookie wall, or not a rookie wall, sophomore wall at some point, sophomore slump. That happens to a lot of quarterbacks, but so far it doesn't seem like it's happening to Stroud. And Stroud is definitely a rule breaker when it comes to quarterbacks. He doesn't seem to follow the typical trend of most rookie quarterbacks. So I wouldn't be surprised if he avoids a sophomore slump altogether and this team just keeps going up.
I agree. And much as it pains me to say this, this Texans team is playing lights out. You mentioned, Rob, it seems like they added the pieces they needed to from last year to really perfect this roster. And I would agree. I think there's been a lot of concerns, about Joe Mixon and how, is he a wash running back? We saw what he was able to do at Cincinnati the last couple seasons, and it's been like, and so, but he really showed out. CJ Stroud is still on target. Nico Collins being that main guy for him. But then when it got down to the red zone, it seemed like Stephon Diggs was that guy for him. And Tank Dell certainly didn't have as much reps as he normally would have, I would say. But I think that's only going to get better as it goes along. And that defense played lights out as well. It really gave the Colts a run for their money. And so yeah, this team is going to be a tough one to beat. And I think you're correct. I think right now they're going to sit at 9, but they could be heading up this list very soon, just based on the talent that they've been able to produce.
Yeah, absolutely.
At number 8, we're going to have the Baltimore Ravens, and I do have to say this team, even though it lost week 1 against the Chiefs, certainly seemed to be better than it was last year as well. I would certainly say, now granted, there were some concerns that I would certainly throw in there, such as Lamar Jackson's not so great accuracy, and some things that just didn't go their way in that game. But things that can be fixable, things that are still, capable to change and could turn the season around. But even though they lost to the Chiefs in a very close manner, really came down to inches, at the end of the day, this is still a dominant team offensively and defensively. And you can't have Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry in the backfield, and especially in the red zone, not be worried. It's 2 dynamic players who, you not only want to stack the box against because of Derrick Henry's ability to just kind of bowl people over, but now you have to also consider Lamar Jackson's running abilities as well as passing abilities. And that just makes it so hard to stop in the red zone, especially, but even, going long drives down the field. I think Zay Jones is only going to be able to be implemented more. or Zay Flowers. I mean, not Jones. Zay Flowers is only going to be implemented more into this offense. Talk about a dynamic receiver coming back for a second season. And, I know we didn't really see a lot from Mark Andrews, a lot more of Isaiah Likely getting the ball. And I know Isaiah Likely was a little bit banged up there at the end of that game. So we'll see. But I think Mark Andrews will be coming right back on in it. And certainly he's up there in one of the top tight ends in the league. So really, this Ravens offense is going to get moving, and we already saw it moving against the Chiefs. And I would say that defense certainly is a lot stellar. But I mean, Roquan Smith on the Ravens too played a light out game. And so this team's going to be tough to beat. I feel like we're repeating ourselves almost every single team that we go on up. But yeah, I would put the Ravens here.
Yeah. I mean, it was very impressive for them to play the Chiefs that close, have it be a game that came down to a matter of inches, like you said, with that foot being out of bounds at the last second. But the big concern, and it's something you brought up, is the Lamar Jackson accuracy. If Lamar Jackson's a more accurate quarterback, the Ravens win this game, and they're probably at number one in our power rankings, not number 7 or 8. And I just think that that's something we're going to have to keep an eye on all season long as we go along here. Because if that issue doesn't improve, then I don't think they will ever have the ability to go all the way, win the Super Bowl, that number one spot in the power rankings. Uh, Granted, they made it all the way to the AFC Championship game last year. Lamar Jackson won MVP because of what he did with his arm and his legs. So he's definitely been a much better quality passer in the past. So likely, he'll probably get back up on the saddle again and start throwing more accurate passes. But, it can happen. Like we saw with Deshaun Watson, a quarterback's accuracy can come and go. And if Lamar Jackson starts missing passes like this on a regular basis, then I could see this being a team that falls completely out of the top 10, regardless of how stacked their defense and backfield is and how great Lamar's running ability is. Because the truth of it is, in today's NFL, you need an accurate quarterback. And missing passes like that in the most important moments of the game with a wide open receiver in the end zone when you're not even that far away, I mean, that's really hard to watch. It's not easy. I'm not even a Ravens fan, and that was tough to like watch happen. I can't imagine how Ravens fans felt when they saw that. And I like Lamar. I really hope he does, fix that issue and that doesn't rear its head again at some point, down the line. But who knows? So for now, they're at number 7. They could definitely go up, but they could also definitely go down. So we'll see what happens with them.
All righty, coming down at number 6. And Rob, did we miss a number 8? Did we miss number 8 team?
Oh, you know what? I think we did. That's all
Oh
right.
my goodness. That's okay. Well, this is going to be our top 9. So just put the put the Buccaneers at number 9 and the the Texans at 8, Ravens at 7. There we go. It's going to be a special week 1 for you. But I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything or anything like that. So that's good. All right. Well, anyways, we'll launch back on in. Number 6, Los Angeles Rams. That's where we have them. Rob, what do we think about the Rams team at number 6?
I was so impressed with their ability to take the Lions to overtime. The Lions were in the NFC Championship game last year, so obviously they're among the best teams in the NFC. I was really impressed with their defensive line. Jared Verse is a menace off the edge. They already have Byron Young. They have some really good young players. I think everyone on that defensive line right now is either in their first or second year. So a lot of youth, a lot of talent. Matt Stafford was a little shaky throughout the game, but when it mattered most, it kind of seemed like he was on the top of his game. Uh, they did sustain some pretty serious injuries throughout the game. They lost Puka Nakua for at least 4 weeks. They lost a couple starting offensive linemen. So their depth's going to be tested here in the beginning of the season. But once those guys come back, it'll be a really strong overall roster. I was very impressed with Cooper Cup. I didn't think he had that much left in the tank, and he looked like he did, a couple years ago when he won that Triple Crown. So if he keeps playing like that, and Puka Nakua comes back and looks like he did last year, and that defensive line keeps producing, that's going to be a scary team. And I want to see if Matt Stafford's inconsistencies were just like early season rust, or if that's something that he might struggle with all year. The offensive line definitely needed to be a little better at protecting him. The injury certainly didn't help, so we'll see if that gets better. But this is definitely, a team that deserves to be in the top 10. It'll be a tough out for anyone.
Absolutely. You pretty much hit the nail on the head right there with that one, Rob. I will just reiterate, it was great to see Cooper Cup back at it again like his old self. That seemed to be, what the Rams needed in this game. It wasn't enough in the end, but I think moving forward with Puka Nakua's injury, he's going to be have to be the one to step up and kind of take the main kind of position of those reps. And on top of that, I'm sure we're also going to see Kyron Williams do a little bit better. I know he certainly didn't have the bestest of games, but I think he's going to bounce back week 2 when I believe when they play the Cardinals. And so expect some more touches from him if any of you all have him in your fantasies. But absolutely, the Rams certainly played lights out, bringing that Lions team to overtime and leading. Honestly, it was the Lions having to come back to bring it to overtime, and that certainly puts a team like the Rams on our power ranking list. So that's why we have them at number 6. Moving on to number 5, their opponent, the Detroit Lions. Pretty much, what we just said about the Rams can be said about the Lions. It was really a battle between two giants. I felt like on that Sunday night game, it seemed like both teams excelled in almost every single position. Some minor setbacks for each team, but it looks like the Lions are even better. Jameis Williams, I believe, is the receiver that really went off. Someone who kind of faded and was more on the back burner last year. Seems like he's certainly up and going, and that certainly is only going to help this Lions team be even better than it was last year, especially when Amon-Ra St. Brown is being double covered, or maybe has the top cornerback whatnot guarding him. Williams can just as much do what St. Brown can do, and that makes it a deeper threat, especially on that offense. And so, Jamar Gibbs really came out running strong. I thought the Lions offensive line did really good wonders for Jared Goff to have the time in the pocket to throw. And really, I think the Lions defense certainly played a lot better. I think last year the question really was the cornerback room and really the pass defense, and I think they certainly stepped it up. And so, absolutely, I think the only reason the Detroit Lions are above the Rams in our power rankings is because they won, week 1. But I think I could see easily either team taking the 5 and 6 spot if the roles had happened to be reversed.
Yeah, I mean, you want to talk about an offense that has a lot of weapons. They didn't even really get like their main guys, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta, Jameer Gibbs. I mean, I know he's not the starting running back, but he is so good. None of those guys really got going in this game. Like you said, they really relied on Jamison Williams, in the first round pick from a couple of years ago, who had the injury history and then the suspension and all that sort of stuff. But Williams has got that blazing, like fast speed. He is so explosive outside, and seeing him return to college form again is just an insane addition for an offense that is already one of the best in the league. If he plays like that all year, he might end up being top 10, top 5 even in receiving yards. This might be a team that has 2 Pro Bowl, 2 All Pro level wide receivers. And with how efficient Jared Goff has looked under this offense, that's really scary for any team in the NFC or the NFC North, especially. And then you have a threat like Sam Laporta at tight end. I don't know who's going to stop this offense once all those guys get going again, once they get back into the rhythm of things. And that defense looks so much improved from last year. All those offseason additions they made really seemed like they paid off, especially in the secondary, where I know they've added a lot of pieces to really. I think they signed a big name free agent and they drafted a guy, and both of them seemed pretty good in that debut. So this seems like a stacked team from top to bottom. And once all those guys get going, like we said, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameer Gibbs, Sam Laporta, I don't know who's going to stop that offense. Really, the only thing that I'd say is a concern with this team is Jared Goff. I know he was good last year, but he's still not the best quarterback in the league. He's got a great team around him, and he can probably take it pretty far. He took it to the NFC Championship game last year, but does he have what it takes to go up against a guy like Patrick Mahomes or Dak Prescott and beat them when it matters most because he didn't beat either of them last year. Well, no, he did beat Patrick Mahomes last year in the opening week. They didn't beat Dak Prescott, but that was when the Chiefs were kind of like, getting out to a slow start. When it comes playoff time, is he going to be able to make those, victories against really good quarterbacks? I don't think so because of the limits he has as a passer. But again, that's such a talented team around him. I can only see them going really far in the playoffs this season.
Heading into number 4, we have the Philadelphia Eagles, your favorite, Rob. And
Yeah,
how do you think they're going to shape up this season? We have them at number 4, so they're obviously very high. But
man, man, oh, that was such a tough game to watch. I hate the Packers and the Eagles, so seeing them have to play each other, I didn't know who to root for, who to root against. The Eagles' defense really was not that good. I was not impressed with it. They have so much talent though on it that I feel like as the season goes on, it's going to get going and it's going to become really good. Those two corners they drafted really high, all those defensive linemen they have. They just signed Bryce Huff from the Jets. They got Jalen Carter, obviously, who was like one of the few defensive players who did look pretty great. N'Kobe Dean, once he starts adapting to being a starter, I think that does have the makings of like a top 10, top five defense. Offensively, they did turn the ball over a bunch. Jalen Hurts, I think, had 3 turnovers. But Saquon Barkley, AJ Brown, Devonta Smith, all three of them were amazing. Dallas Goedert didn't even really get going, and we all know what he can do. That offensive line still looks just as dominant as ever, especially when it comes to run blocking, even without Jason Kelsey for the most part, outside of that failed tush push that they had. So, this is going to be a team that I think is going to come along slowly, but I think it's going to come along well. And when all those pieces start clicking, I am disgusted to say this, but I think they will be a really good team in this league on both sides of the ball. Hopefully, I'm wrong and that doesn't happen and they just lose a lot, but it's hard to see that happening with the pieces they have right now.
absolutely, I will reiterate those things and also bring up, I think the weakness here for the Eagles is really that center position. There was a lot of muff snaps, snapped balls that, were not, Jalen Hurts was not ready for. There was a couple of those mishaps. And granted, this is week 1. Things like that can be cleaned up, but certainly that was, I think, one of the concerns I had with this team going on in, who's going to be replacing Jason Kelsey and a player like that, a veteran source on the team as well. And so we'll certainly see as it goes along, but adding that Saquon Barkley addition, I know that on the Redzone Rodeo, we didn't think necessarily he was going to go off. We felt that, his time in New York, just kind of made him a little bit more of a washed, running back, overhyped in a way. But he really shut us all up against the Packers in Brazil. And I think it really can show that, and I think this goes for any player, but if they can stay healthy, and especially if Barkley can stay healthy, this is going to be a weapon that the Eagles, were missing. And granted, they had some good running backs, last year and DeAndre Swift and whatnot, but DeAndre Swift is no Saquon Barkley playing like he did against Green Bay. And granted, again, that's week 1. It's the first game. We'll see how the consistency will add on up as these weeks go along. But if Saquon Barkley can run the ball like he did, or even give the Eagles offense the amount of success that he did in the game against Green Bay, even a little bit, that's going to be a win. And so I think having that dynamic player in the running back room, it's kind of like with the Ravens and Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. It's not completely the same, but you have a mobile quarterback with a very talented running back who can do a lot with the ball, passing wise and rushing, rushing and receiving wise. And so that's really going to be, I think, one thing that the Eagles will bring, that kind of dual dynamic. And teams, I think you're going to have to really decide defensively wise, how are you going to combat that? And I think that's going to certainly be tough, and especially for defenses that aren't too well put together. This is going to be a running back that's going to rack up a lot of yardage on you. And so Eagles at number 4, but they certainly can fly higher. See what I did there, Rob? Fly higher.
I do, and I don't like it.
I know. But you also put at number 3 your Cowboys a little bit ahead of the Eagles. Why, Rob, did you put the Cowboys ahead of the Eagles?
I think they have a better quarterback. I think you look at the 2 teams, and I think the Cowboys right now have a better defense than Philadelphia. I think they have a better quarterback, and I think CeeDee Lamb is better than any receiver they have on their team right now. I think the Eagles have more weapons overall on offense, and I think their offensive line might be a little better right now, at least. Although I think the Cowboys' offensive line can catch up once those rookies start going. But when you have a better quarterback and a better defense, it's kind of hard for me not to say you're the better team. Jalen Hurts did have 3 turnovers. Dak Prescott didn't have any at all. I know Dak Prescott didn't play the best. He only had like 150 something yards and like barely above like a 58 or 59% completion percentage. But as the season goes on, I'm sure he'll get better. I'm sure Hurts will get better too. It's just hard for me to look at the Eagles right now as better than the Cowboys when they don't have the same level quarterback. I know that might be a controversial statement. A lot of people are really big fans of Jalen Hurts, but I don't think I've ever seen Jalen Hurts, consistently play at an MVP level, really since that Super Bowl season that they had a couple years ago. And that I don't know if I could even say that was really him playing at an MVP level because it was more like he had a really talented team around him that kind of carried him, made it really easy for him. I've never seen him do the things that Dak Prescott does. Granted, no matter what you think about these 2 quarterbacks, these 2 teams certainly belong on the top 10 list. Where you rank them right now, I guess, is kind of subjective since they haven't played each other yet. We have a very small sample size to look at, but Cowboys have a phenomenal defense, a great wide receiver in CeeDee Lamb. They have an elite tight end in Jake Ferguson, who might miss a little bit of time with an injury, but not that much. They have great special teams. This is just a complete football team that I think will only get better as the season goes along. And I feel really good about having them at that number 3 spot.
Moving on to number 2, we have the San Francisco 49ers. And certainly this team, I think, outplayed our expectations Monday night because we both had the Jets winning, and we all know they did not. And so this team, say what you will about Brock Purdy and say what you will about him being a system quarterback, but this 49ers team was playing well, very well against a Jets team and a defense that is pretty high ranked as well. Say what you will about the Jets offense, certainly was not doing what it should be doing, but its defense in many games last season and even in the game against the 49ers, they did everything they could to lock them down. And for a while they were successful. But this was another one of the games where it was a blowout in a way. It was not a one-score game. The 49ers kept driving it down the field. And this was without Christian McCaffrey. And I think that was a big play as well to kind of show the dominance of the 49ers, is that they don't need Christian McCaffrey to do what they do. And now imagine Christian McCaffrey coming back, maybe even this week, maybe next week, who knows, but still this 49ers team is going to win, and it doesn't require Christian McCaffrey to do so. And those weapons around Brock Purdy, you say what you want about him. But as long as he keeps dishing the ball out to those players and letting them do what they do, this team is going to be, again, one of the more unstoppable on offense. And I think its defense also played better than it did last year as well. So this is going to be another team that has a defense that can compete on the field and give the ball back to its offense. So you're going to need to find a lot of unique ways to stop not only the offense, but keep your offense on the field if you're wanting to keep up with the 49ers and win a game against them.
Yeah, and as much as it pains me to say this, kind of like we were talking about with the Lions, this team found a way to score a lot of points, not even using their main weapons, right? Brandon Ayuk didn't get going, George Kittle didn't get going, Christian McCaffrey wasn't even on the field. Their offense was this efficient using Debo and some guy named Jordan Mason, who I'd never even heard of before the game last weekend. It's kind of crazy to think about the fact that they were able to just cut through a very good Jets defense like that with players like, not even at the top of their roster. Once Ayuk and Kittle and CMC, their top 3 skill position players, finally get going, and then all of a sudden you have Debo and Jordan Mason back in, their original roles. I can't even imagine how scary good this offense could be. Like you said, that defense is just phenomenal all around. Fred Warner is a special, special player who just destroys opponents. Man, this is a complete football team. There's no real weaknesses that I can think about outside of the health of their players. It's just Shanahan is a great coach who, innovates every single time he goes on a football field, it seems like. Man, it makes me sick to my stomach, but the San Francisco 49ers seem like a powerhouse right now. And I think the safe bet would be, oh God, it hurts to say this, but I think they would be on track to repeat as NFC champions. So, God, that is so disgusting to say that. But they have a really, really good football team, and there's no denying it right now. So
Yeah, they do. And number one, we have the Kansas City Chiefs.
yeah, this is pretty self-explanatory. Two-time Super Bowl champions, back-to-back winners, the past 2 years. They have a great new wide receiver room. Didn't even have to see Hollywood Brown play because he was out injured that first week, and they still were dominant on the outside. Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy both look super explosive. They look like great playmakers, and like I said, they're only going to add to that by getting Hollywood Brown back probably this coming weekend. That defense looks like it used to. Isaiah Pacheco was running the ball really well. That offensive line was giving Mahomes lots of time. Travis Kelce even did some things, even though I think he is slowing down a little bit compared to what he used to be in his prime. And obviously, Mahomes is Mahomes, the greatest quarterback of our generation. Probably going to be up there rivaling Tom Brady someday as the only two quarterbacks to ever win Super Bowls like this. This is just unfair at this point, honestly. Like this team is loaded at every position. It feels like they lost some of their best defensive players this offseason, and it seems like they just found random guys to replace them who stepped up and played just as good as those guys they lost did. Andy Reid is one heck of a coach. This is a complete football team with the best football player on earth on its roster that, is just the ultimate difference maker. And, unless the Chiefs get unlucky or someone really figures out how to stop that offense, which, no one has yet, uh, this is going to be a three-time Super Bowl champion, the first team ever to three-peat, I think. So,
I would agree with you, Rob. This team is better than it was last year, and last year it won the Super Bowl. And I think that says everything it needs to be said about it. They have the best chances to do this three-peat, since back when the Patriots had the possibility to do it, and I think the Chiefs are in a better position than the Patriots were then to do it this time. And so, if you have 15 on your team, if you have Patrick Mahomes, talk about a playmaker that not only is a master at the skill position of quarterback, but he does things outside the box that you can't even call play wise. And he just makes plays work, and he doesn't do what Will Levis did and just throw the ball up 50-50 in hopes that it came together. It's some of the stuff that he does certainly seems like, oh my goodness, that's so random, but that he practiced that, or that he thought about all the possibilities of what could go wrong. And if there was one thing that he doubted, he would not have done it. And so, this is talk about a complete team like the 49ers. This team only got better. And I know that there's a lot of hate about this team and a lot of people that believe that, the NFL rigs these games so that the Chiefs can win. That's a load of bull crap. This team is just really good. And people telling you that are probably people that hate that this team is very good and their team is not as good as this team. This is the model, folks. This is how you build a football team. My Tennessee Titans are not this team, and that's why they're literally at the bottom of the power rankings. The Cowboys still can't seem to win a playoff game, and that's because they're not the Chiefs. They haven't figured it out. And so, this is a team that can win it, and that's why they're number one. And they're probably going to be number one unless something drastically happens, or unless, as Rob, you said, someone figures this team out. And
yeah,
that's it. That's really it.
that's the way it's got to be. Real quick, we did forget a team on the rankings here. If you had to add another team to this list, who are you leaning towards?
Definitely the Tennessee Titans, number 10. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. No, they would not. They would not be there whatsoever. That, yeah, that will it's going to take a long time to do that. I will say a team at number 10, I'd probably put the Dolphins. I'd probably put Miami. I know that they certainly didn't have the greatest showing against Jacksonville week 1. But I just from the playmakers they have on their team, the speed that they have on their team, they have Tyreek Hill, which is arguably one of the best wide receivers up there with CeeDee Lamb. You know, talk about speed, capability, durability, because he doesn't go down often either. And not and when he does go down, it's because it's a real reason. It's not because he wants to be out there on the field. Mentality like that is going to build winning culture. I think the question is, and why I would probably put them at 10 is what can Tua do this year that's different than last year? Can he be more consistent? But I would probably put the Dolphins up there at 10 if I had to add another team.
Yeah, I think I'd pick another AFC East team. I'd probably go with the Buffalo Bills.
Hmm.
You know, I still think the Dolphins end up winning the AFC East just because I like their overall roster better. But man, watching Josh Allen go Superman mode after being down like 3 scores or whatever it was against the Arizona Cardinals, he's just one of the best players in football. One of those guys who is like, just the best player on the field every time he steps on the field, just about. When you have a quarterback like that, even though I'd say the roster around Josh Allen is nowhere near as good as the roster around the Dolphins, he's just a special player. I feel like if you like, I think we said this last week, but if you took Josh Allen and you put him on the Dolphins, I think that'd be a team that wins like that'd be a team that could beat the Kansas City Chiefs in the Super Bowl. You know,
Oh yeah,
uh, that would be a very special squad. So it's going to be a battle of best roster versus best quarterback, and it'll be interesting to see how that plays out in the AFC East this year.
yeah. Well, they never make it to the Super Bowl, Rob, but they would make it to the championship game. That's for sure. That's for sure. And that would be a game to watch. That would be a game to watch.
Be better than the Cowboys did the past 30 years.
You might be right about that. Well, y'all, that is our power rankings. Although it was a little bit disrupted this time. We gave you a top 9, then add a top 10 on there. But we will certainly come back week 2. If you folks have any, you know, comments, or maybe you think a team shouldn't be that high, or another team should be in the list, we'd love to continue on that conversation in the comment section below. Let's build this community, y'all. But we're going to move on to our next segment, our last segment of the week, and it's our week 2 predictions. And as you can see on the screen, folks, our predictions for week 1 was terrible. We were awful, legit trash. And I would certainly say if you picked the teams that we didn't pick, you probably were better off in terms of the betting worlds or fantasy or anything like that. Well, we're hoping that this terrible start to week 1, just like my Titans, will be turned around, and we'll give you better predictions. And right now, me and Rob are tied, but of course, I'm going to win by the end of the season. But it's all going to start here. And we're going to go right into it. Our Thursday night game, Bills versus the Dolphins. Rob, who are you taking?
Man, this is tough. We were just talking about this quarterback versus roster. Dolphins have the better roster. Bills have the better quarterback. Um, oh man, I think I'm going to go Buffalo. Can't really give you a definitive reason. My gut feeling is that Josh Allen is going to go out there mad, motivated with something to prove, and he's going to find a way to win this football game, even with lesser talent around him. But I wouldn't be shocked at this game going either way.
I'm going opposite, Rob. I'm going with the Dolphins. I'm going with Hill, Waddle, Tua. Um, Achan's not playing, so that's going to be an interesting thing to see.
I
Uh,
thought I saw he was day to day.
oh, that's right. It's Raheem Mostert that's out.
Yeah.
Mostert's out. Achan's day to day. He'll probably play. That's right. That's right. So yeah, but I think this. I think the Dolphins team is gonna be able to beat Josh Allen, and whoever else he has around him on the Bills that day.
Yeah.
We'll see. We'll see. All right. The next game, Buccaneers versus Lions. Another fun matchup against 2 teams in our power rankings. Rob, where are you leaning?
I'm leaning towards the Lions. Buccaneers were amazing last weekend, but I've never seen them do it against a good team, just a bad team, the Commanders. And like we talked about, Baker Mayfield has that inconsistency issue. So it's unclear if that will, rear its ugly head again this season. But even if it doesn't and Baker plays just as well as he did last week, the Lions, I think, are still a better team overall. I like their defense better. I like their wide receivers better. I think their offensive line is just as good as Tampa Bay's, if not better. So I think if the Buccaneers look like they did last week, it'll be a close game, but I think the Lions are going to win this one.
Yeah, I'm going to go opposite, Rob. I'm going with the Buccaneers. I think they're going to sail right out with the win here. And I think Baker Mayfield, you're going to start to see more consistent play. And I think he's a better quarterback than Jared Goff when they're both playing at their top games. And so I think that this Buccaneers team is probably going to upset the Lions. And I know that goes against who we have in higher in the power rankings. But I'm expecting a shift in the power rankings coming at following week 2. This game I think is going to be close. And I do think the Buccaneers are gonna steal a win over the Lions, even though I know they are not betting favorites in this match.
Yeah.
Moving to the Bengals versus the Chiefs, another one of these great matchups this week. I certainly feel like some of the matchups this week are more, you have the dominant teams playing the lesser of the two. But we do have some good matchups, and I think that this one is certainly going to be up there because you're talking about a quarterback in Joe Burrow who has figured out the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes. And so granted, what we saw last week against the Patriots was not stellar. And I know you and me, Rob, have talked about this before, whether or not it's been on the podcast or not, but the Bengals seem to start off slow. And this is week 2. So will we see the Bengals team, starting to cook along? But I'm still going to be taking the Chiefs. I think Patrick Mahomes and this roster, Andy Reid and then coaching, it's just more complete than the Bengals are right now. And I know Joe Burrow has figured out Patrick Mahomes and that Chiefs team before, but this is a better Chiefs team that hasn't gone up against yet. And I think that's certainly going to take away the win. So I'm taking the Chiefs here against the Bengals in week 2.
Yeah, I think the Chiefs are a better team than Cincinnati for sure, but there's just something about Joe Burrow playing against Kansas City that makes me want to pick the Bengals. I know they were terrible against the Patriots, and it looked like their offense couldn't do anything at all. Uh, so this is probably insane, but I think I'm going to pick the Cincinnati Bengals in this matchup. It's kind of like an unstoppable force versus an immovable object. Will the Bengals, ability to defeat the Kansas City Chiefs prevail, or will their, sucking in the beginning of the season prevail? Because both of those things should theoretically be in effect here in this game. So I think their, effectiveness against the Kansas City Chiefs is going to show up. I think maybe the Chiefs won't be expecting it because of how bad the Bengals were last week, and I think they might get caught off guard, kind of like a trap game situation. So even though I believe the Kansas City Chiefs are a much better team overall, I think Joe Burrow just has a knack for beating this team, and I think he's going to catch them by surprise just because of how bad the Bengals were last week, and they're going to find a way to win this football game.
All righty, Rob. Those are some bold words. We will certainly see how it comes on together. But all right, Chiefs going for me and you going for the Bengals. Very interesting.
Being bold here, Carson.
I know, you really are. Well, we're going to move into our Sunday night game, where I feel like, honestly, this game's not going to be very close. That's just me. But we have the Bears versus the Texans. And I don't think this is a very difficult choice for me because, and as much as it pains me to do it, because I hate Houston and I hate the Texans and pretty much everything they stand for, but they are clearly the better team. I don't think Caleb Williams is going to look any better than he did week 1. Doesn't matter the offensive weapons the Bears have. And CJ Stroud was able to make that team really start to make a move and really start to get going. You already saw that with going back to one of his favorite receivers in Nico Collins. He was working in Stephon Diggs near the red zone. I think Tank Dell's involvement is only going to increase. Joe Mixon is going to be running it down the throats. The defense is going to be dominant. And I don't think that Stroud is going to make mistakes that Will Levis did, week 1, where he just throws up the ball for a pick 6 to win the game for the Bears. So I think this Bears team certainly has playmakers, certainly has a good defense. Um, I just don't think it's going to be enough to overcome the Texans, and that's why I'm taking CJ Stroud and the Texans with this win.
Yeah, I mean, it's two really good defenses going up against each other, and one team has like a Pro Bowl level quarterback who's done well in the playoffs before, and one team has a rookie quarterback who was pretty terrible last week. So it does kind of seem like a no-brainer to take the Houston Texans, but I can't shake this feeling that the Bears are going to find a way to win this game somehow. I don't know if Caleb is going to turn into Caleb Williams that we all remember from college, or if their defense is just going to be that good. Something is telling me Chicago Bears are going to win this game and beat CJ Stroud. And I think Caleb Williams is going to have a good game. Uh, I know the Texans have that great defense. I know it's probably better than the Titans defense. You know, they're stacked at cornerback. They have great pass rushers. Defensive tackle is not a problem. Linebackers great. Uh, but I just think it's going to slow down for Caleb this week. You know, he's not going to be worried. This isn't going to be his first game ever in the NFL. And I think you're going to see him take advantage of those great weapons he has around him. And I'm not sure the Bears offense will be great, but I think it'll be better than it was against Tennessee. And I think that will be enough with that amazing defense they have to possibly get them a win. And I have this gut feeling that Chicago's going to win this game. So I'm going Bears.
Well, I think you're going to be wrong, but that's okay. I remember back in the playoffs when I had a gut feeling about the Dolphins, remember, and how awful they did. So sometimes gut feelings are not always what they seem to be, which is okay, Rob, but you're going to find that out when the Texans end up walking away with the win here, even though it would be so much better for the Titans if the Bears would win. So kind of like stabbing the knife into my heart while also like cheering on a team the same time. It's really tragic. But anyways, that'll be Sunday night for me, folks. And we're going to move on to our Monday night matchup where we have the Eagles versus the Falcons. Now, Rob, who are you taking in this? Obviously, the Eagles, your favorite team. So,
Man, this is tough. Kirk Cousins was bad last week. He was really, really bad. And that Atlanta Falcons offensive line was really, really bad, which I think was the reason Kirk was so bad. TJ Watt was just throwing him on the ground all game long. There was no time to throw. Now you look at an Eagles defensive line that has guys like Josh Sweat, Bryce Huff. They don't have Hassan Reddick anymore, but they have Nolan Smith, a rookie from a couple of years ago in the first round, who might be emerging finally for them. And obviously, their defensive tackles are great at generating pressure. But at the same time, that defensive line doesn't have a difference maker like TJ Watt. You know, it doesn't have someone who's going to consistently destroy their offensive line. So if the Falcons' offensive line can buy Kirk Cousins a little time, I know this is a primetime game with Kirk Cousins against a team I have at number 4 on the power rankings, with the Falcons not even being on it at all. So logically, I should say that the Eagles are going to beat the Falcons here. But again, I have a gut feeling that the Atlanta Falcons will walk away from this matchup as the victors. I believe in Bijan Robinson. I believe in Kyle Pitts. And I think Kirk Cousins is going to have more time in the pocket and be able to use all those weapons he has. Falcons defense is not impressive. I know they did a good job against the Steelers, but that's the Steelers offense with Justin Fields at the helm. Maybe not the most imposing unit, but if they are able to force some turnovers against the Eagles, which it seems like the Eagles are willing to give the ball away to just about anyone, I think that would be enough for a Kirk Cousins led offense, with Kirk Cousins having more time to throw the ball to do some real damage. So, Eagles, I still think, are a much better and more complete team. But I just have this gut feeling here that the Atlanta Falcons are going to march into the stadium and run the Eagles off of the field. So I'm going Atlanta Falcons.
that's really bold, Rob. That's really bold. I'm
I'm
going to
going
stick
both tonight.
with logic here, especially when it comes to the power rankings. And I'm really starting to sense this like sneaking Cowboys, opinions coming on in, and really being like, I could never pick the Eagles to win a game. Just a sneaking suspicion I have, but that's okay, because you'll just be one game less in terms of the winning record that you'll need to beat me by the end of the season. In regards to the picks that we all make, but I'm clearly going with the Eagles here. I will not deny the Falcons have playmakers on them. Bijan Robinson, I think, is a special player. You mentioned Kyle Pitts. I just know of myself and so many other people who have drafted Kyle Pitts onto their team on fantasy rosters and have been let down every single year. I feel like this year's going to be no different. So he had that one big play in week 1. I don't think he's going to have very many big plays going on from here. But I think the Eagles' defense is similar to the Steelers, and that they're going to be able to get to the quarterback again, putting that pressure on Kirk Cousins. Even if Jalen Hurts turns the ball over 3 times, I think Saquon Barkley and the rest of that offense will be able to generate points against a weak Falcons defense. And so I think the Eagles here winning. I wouldn't say it's a no-brainer, but I do think that they will walk away with the win on Monday night. They are the 4th best team in our power rankings. Falcons aren't even on it. And so I think that just shows where the better team lies on paper. Obviously, anything can happen. Upsets can happen, Rob. Maybe I might be eating my words next episode that we record. But I think that the Eagles will be stepping onto the field and they will be flying away with a win here.
Yeah. Again, that's probably logically the best way to look at it. But again, I have this gut feeling. And also, I think I believe in Kyle Pitts so much because I'm a Cowboys fan, and I have a very firm mantra of this year is finally the year. So, that applies to Kyle Pitts just as much as it does my Dallas Cowboys. Speaking of the Cowboys, I meant to circle back to this, at the beginning of the show, but I think the Dallas Cowboys will beat the New Orleans Saints this weekend. I think it'll be a much closer game than people expect. I really am high on the Saints. I think they have a great roster, especially after watching them destroy the Carolina Panthers. Not that they're much of competition, but I know my Cowboys can get a little cocky against teams like that. So I hope they don't do that and have a repeat of the Cardinals game from last year. But I think they should still figure out a way to win this game because overall, I'd say the Cowboys have a much better team.
Absolutely. I think in that matchup as well, I'll be taking the Cowboys. Um, Clearly, I don't think the game's going to be as close because, again, we watched Derek Carr beat up on the Panthers, which is basically a glorified college team at this point, and not a good one. And so yeah, so I think that's certainly going to pose some threats, pose some problems, but not enough to stop the Cowboys. So I'm going to take them. And then I guess we should wrap around to my Titans too. Titans Jets week 2. I will be going with my Titans here. I do think that they can get things on track. I believe Will Levis can turn things around despite the horrific week 1 performance. Aaron Rodgers looks old. He looks not mobile. That offensive line, granted, it went up against the 49ers. It does not look as solid as probably Rodgers would hope. And I think that's going to be enough for Trevondre Sweat and Jeffrey Simmons to get at him and keep the pressure up just like they did on Caleb Williams. I think the defense is going to be able to lock down some of those key players, maybe not all the way in terms of Garrett Wilson because he's just a dynamic player. But if the Titans offense can get going like on paper they should, if Will Levis can be that guy, I think that they can get some points on the board just like they did against the Bears in the first half. So anything can happen. It might be my Titans bias coming out, but I think they're going to win at home against the Jets week 2.
Yeah, I don't believe that, Carson. I'm sorry,
Okay.
but I have no faith in Will Levis, man. I'm out. I am have zero stock invested in Will Levis. I don't want anything to do with him in terms of my predictions. I think the Titans are going to be in a really bad spot all season long, and I don't think they're going to beat the Jets.
That's tragic. That's awful. But you know what? You're probably right. You're probably right. If Will Levis goes out and plays just as bad as he did against the Bears, the next episode, my tune might change, and I might be betting against the Titans every single game for the rest of the season. Probably not, because that's not realistic. But yeah, it's not going to be a good place, as you mentioned.
You should
But
tell them to trade for Trey Lance.
no, because I know exactly how good Trey Lance is, and he's worse than Will Levis.
I don't know
Yeah,
if that's possible.
I think it is. I think it is also because he's a cowboy, icky. So.
Hey, wow. Okay, I see how it is.
But it's okay. You know what, Rob? I will remember this. You betting against the Titans and you putting the Titans last in the division power rankings or in the division matchup type, final record predictions, I should say, which you might be right. But I will remember that. I will remember that. And from week to week. So just keep that in mind. Just keep that in mind, because I might not be so favorable to the Cowboys down the road. I might bet against them just for heck's sake.
Okay, well, you're gonna remember it, you're gonna look back on it, and you're gonna be like, "Wow, Rob was right. It's crazy. Why did I listen to him?"
No, no, that's not how it works. That's not how that works. Oh man. Well, I'm sure folks, you can see how much fun we have doing this, but it is time to close our second episode of this second season that we're with you all. Thank you all for watching all the way with us, staying subscribed, sharing this with your friends, liking the video. If you guys aren't subscribed yet, please make sure you do so. That only helps grow the channel, only gives us more reason to do this, even though we'll be doing this regardless. But having you along with the journey, having you along with us on the rodeo would be awesome. Building this community. And if you know anybody who would love to hear us and would like to be part of the community as well, feel free to share it with your friends. It'd be great to kind of grow this up and start to get you more involved. And so, like I mentioned, if you have any comments, any questions you like to pose, or any thoughts on any of the upcoming games, power rankings, or how much you think the Titans and Cowboys suck, or how much you think they're the amazing teams ever, we would love to hear that and love to hear from you. Definitely the best part of the week. So thank you all. And is there anything else, Rob, before we close out for the evening?
No, I think you nailed it. Thank you to everyone who makes this possible, or well, doesn't matter. I mean, really, we make this possible, but thank you to everyone who watches it and enjoys it, and is here with us. It's just the best time ever. I love getting to do this with you, Carson, and I'm excited to do it every week. So, yeah, just thank you so much.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right. Well, guys, we're going to be signing off for the night, and we'll be getting this up and loaded up and getting ready for another amazing week 2 of football. And so until next time, guys, we'll see you at the end of week 2. We'll start talking about week 3. Can't believe football's here. It feels like a dream come true. All right, guys. Well, hey, have a good night, and we'll see you all on the other side. See ya.